Xylith stared up at the human captain with complete confusion. In Vexery culture, defeated warriors were killed immediately. To leave an enemy alive after victory was unthinkable. It showed weakness, hesitation, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the natural order. "Kill me," he demanded. "End this with honor." Lucy shook her head. "I did not fight you to kill you. I fought you to prove a point." She walked to the edge of the debris pile and began directing her soldiers to clear the rubble from Xylith's legs. The Vexery commander could not understand what was happening. His enemy had won, had him completely at her mercy, and was now helping him survive. Why? Xylith asked as the humans worked to free him. Lucy crouched beside him so they were at eye level. "Because killing you would only make the Vexery angry. They would send more fleets, more hunters, and eventually they might succeed in conquering us. But if I spare your life, you become something much more valuable. You become a witness." She stood and looked up at the sky where she knew the Vexery ships were watching. "Go back to your people. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humans are not prey. Tell them that we are apex predators from a death world who have spent our entire history killing everything that threatened us. Tell them that we showed you mercy, not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose when to kill and when to let live." Xylith listened in silence as the humans freed his crushed legs. The bones were broken in several places, but Vexery could heal from such injuries. He would walk again, though never as well as before. He would carry the scars of this defeat for the rest of his life. Medical teams from both sides worked together to stabilize him for transport back to the Crimson Fang. It was strange, this cooperation between predators. Xylith had never experienced anything like it. On every other world, the relationship between Vexery and prey was simple. The strong dominated, the weak submitted. There was no middle ground, but humans did not fit into that simple framework. They were neither dominant nor submissive. They were something else entirely. They were partners, allies, equals. They fought when threatened and helped when the threat was over. It was a completely foreign concept to Vexery thinking. Before he left Earth, Xylith asked to speak with Private Amy Torres one last time. She had been released from captivity after the duel, her wounds treated by human doctors. She stood before him now, small and fragile looking, but with that same fearless expression in her eyes. "You were right," Xylith admitted. "We did not understand what we were hunting." Amy nodded. "Most species do not understand us. They see our soft bodies and assume we are weak. They did not realize that our weakness forced us to become strong in other ways." "What ways?" "We learned to think ahead, to plan, to work together, to never give up no matter how bad things looked. Other predators rely on strength and speed. We rely on persistence and adaptability. We are the species that climbed out of trees, crossed oceans, and reached for the stars. We did not do that by being the biggest or the fastest. We did it by refusing to accept our limitations." Xylith considered her words carefully. The Vexery had dominated the galaxy because they had never encountered a species like this. Every other intelligent race had either submitted or been destroyed. Humans were the first to fight back effectively, the first to learn Vexery weaknesses faster than the Vexery could adapt. He returned to the Crimson Fang and immediately broadcast a message to the entire Vexery Empire. Earth was to be classified as a forbidden hunting ground. Humans were not prey. They were apex predators from a world that produced warriors through survival of the fittest. Any Vexery who challenged them would face the same fate as the Grand Hunt expedition. The message spread across the galaxy within days. Other species received it through their intelligence networks and began to pay attention to the small blue planet that had defeated the most feared hunters in known space. 3 months later, Captain Lucy Palmer received a new transmission at the Houston Command Center. Dana Scott translated it immediately and brought it to Lucy with an expression of cautious optimism. "It is from a species called the Pralith," Dana explained. "They are a trading civilization with connections throughout the galactic core. They want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth." Lucy read the message carefully. The Pralith had heard about what happened to the Vexery. They were impressed, but more importantly, they were interested. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing against the galaxy's greatest predators. That made humans valuable as potential allies, trading partners, and friends. "They mentioned something interesting at the end," Dana added. "The Prowlers say they have encountered other aggressive species who might target Earth in the future. They are offering to help us prepare." Kevin Marsh looked worried. "More aliens coming to hunt us?" Lucy shook her head slowly. "No, more aliens coming to test us. Word is spreading about what happened here. Every predator species in the galaxy is going to want to know if the stories are true. They will come to challenge us, to prove themselves against the creatures who defeated the Vexery." She stood and walked to the window that overlooked the Houston skyline. The city was peaceful now, its people going about their daily lives unaware of the galactic attention focused on their world. "We need to be ready," Lucy continued, "not just for attacks, but for everything that comes with being noticed by the galaxy. Trade, diplomacy, alliances, conflicts. Humanity just graduated from isolation to participation in something much bigger than ourselves." Dana joined her at the window. "Do you think we are ready for that?" Lucy thought about everything they had learned during the Vexery hunt. Humans were adaptable, persistent, and resourceful. They had faced extinction-level threats throughout their history and survived every single one. They had climbed from caves to cities to spacecraft through sheer determination and refusal to accept defeat. "We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and ourselves," Lucy said. "We turned wolves into dogs and conquered every environment on our planet. We built civilizations, split atoms, and reached other worlds. Whatever the galaxy throws at us, we will find a way to handle it." She turned back to her team with a smile. "We are humans. It is what we do." Somewhere in the depths of space, Commander Xyleth received reports of the Pralith diplomatic mission. He watched the human response with professional interest. These strange creatures had spared his life and offered friendship to aliens who approached with peaceful intentions. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Xyleth made a personal note in his private journal. If the Vexery ever needed allies against a greater threat, they should consider the humans of Earth, not as prey or subjects, but as equals. Perhaps even as friends. It was a strange thought for an apex predator to have. But then again, these humans had a way of changing. How other species thought about everything. The galaxy would never be quite the same again. Xyleth faced an impossible situation. The Grand Hunt had become a disaster unlike anything in Vexery history. His warriors were dying in the forests of this primitive world, killed by creatures who should have been easy prey. The survivors were frightened and confused, their confidence shattered by an enemy they could not understand. He had two choices: retreat and face eternal shame, or continue and watch his remaining hunters die one by one. Neither option was acceptable. The Vexery had never retreated from a hunt. It was simply not done. Their entire culture was built on the certainty of their dominance. To admit defeat would destroy everything his people believed about themselves, but continuing was equally impossible. The humans had proven themselves to be something the Vexery had never encountered. They were not stronger or faster or better equipped. They were simply relentless. Every time Xyleth thought he understood their tactics, they changed. Every time he believed he had them cornered, they slipped away and struck from unexpected angles. They fought like creatures who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. Captain Lucy Palmer watched the Vexery fleet through satellite imagery and saw the same dilemma playing out in real time. The alien ships had stopped launching reinforcements. The hunting parties on the ground had pulled back to defensive positions. Something had changed in the enemy command structure, and Lucy intended to exploit it. She contacted Dana Scott. "Can you send a direct message to their commander?" Dana nodded. "I have decoded their communication protocols. I can send anything you want." Lucy thought carefully about what she wanted to say. The Vexari respected strength and dominance. They believed in the natural order of predators and prey. She needed to speak to them in terms they would understand. "Send this message. Captain Lucy Palmer of the United Nations Defense Force challenges Commander Xyleth of the Vexari Empire to single combat. The winner determines the fate of Earth. If I lose, humanity accepts subjugation. If Xyleth loses, the Vexari leave our world forever." Kevin Marsh turned to her with shock on his face. "Captain, you cannot be serious. These creatures are twice your size with 4 arms and claws that can cut through steel." Lucy smiled grimly. "I know exactly what they are. But I also know what we are. And I know something about Vexari culture that gives us an advantage." She pulled up the intelligence files Dana had compiled from intercepted communications. The Vexari have strict honor codes. A challenge from a worthy adversary cannot be refused without losing status. Xyleth has already lost face by failing to conquer us quickly. If he refuses my challenge, his own people will see him as a coward. He has no choice but to accept. The message reached the Crimson Fang within minutes. Xyleth read it 3 times before responding. The small human captain was right. He could not refuse. His officers were already looking at him with uncertainty in their eyes. Another refusal would destroy what remained of his authority. He sent his acceptance. The duel would take place at sunrise in an abandoned human arena in the city called Denver. No weapons except what each combatant could carry. No interference from either side. The entire galaxy would watch through the Vexari broadcast network. Lucy Palmer arrived at the stadium just as the first light of dawn touched the snow-covered peaks to the west. She had spent the night preparing, studying every piece of footage they had of Vexari combat techniques. She knew their strengths and weaknesses. She knew how they moved, how they attacked, how they pressed advantages. Most importantly, she knew they expected her to fight like Vexari prey. Defensive, cautious, hoping to survive long enough to find an escape. That was not what she intended to do. Xyleth stood in the center of the arena, his 4 arms flexed and ready. He had removed his ceremonial armor to show confidence. His scales gleamed in the morning light, and his claws extended to their full length. He was magnificent and terrifying, a perfect predator facing what he believed was his final weak opponent. "You are brave for a prey creature," Xyleth said through his translator. "I will make your death quick in recognition of your courage." Lucy circled slowly, keeping her distance. She wore light tactical gear and carried only a combat knife strapped to her thigh. The Vexari watching from the orbiting ships probably laughed at her pathetic weapon. That was fine. She wanted them to underestimate her. Xyleth attacked first, as she knew he would. He charged forward with incredible speed, his upper arms reaching to grab her while his lower arms swept low to cut off escape routes. It was a perfect hunting technique, the same one his species had used for millions of years. Lucy dove to the side at the last possible moment, rolling under his sweeping claws and coming up behind him. She did not try to attack. Not yet. She wanted him to chase her. The pattern repeated several times. Xyleth attacked, Lucy evaded, and each time she led him slightly closer to the northern end of the arena. The Vexari commander was becoming frustrated. His prey refused to fight, refused to stand still, refused to behave like any creature he had ever hunted. "Stand and face me," he roared. "Fight like a warrior." Lucy kept moving. I am fighting like a human. You just do not recognize it yet. She reached the position she had selected the night before. A section of the upper seating had been weakened by years of neglect. The support columns were cracked, and the concrete above them was barely holding together. All it needed was the right impact at the right angle. Xylith charged again, his frustration overriding his caution. He was faster than before, more committed to the attack. He would not let her escape this time. Lucy stood her ground until the last second, then dropped flat as Xylith's momentum carried him past her. He crashed into the weakened support column with tremendous force. The concrete above groaned and then gave way, tons of debris falling directly onto his legs and lower body. Xylith screamed as his limbs were crushed beneath the rubble. He struggled to free himself, but the weight was too great even for his powerful muscles. He looked up to see Lucy Palmer walking toward him, her combat knife in her hand. He understood now. The humans did not fight with honor or follow rules of engagement. They studied their enemies, found weaknesses, and exploited them without mercy. They were not prey at all. They were something far more dangerous. Lucy stood over the fallen commander and raised her knife. The blade caught the morning light as every veggie in the fleet watched their greatest warrior await his death at the hands of a small soft creature from a primitive world. Then Lucy did something that confused every alien. Watching, she lowered the knife and stepped back. Commander Xylith decided to see these humans for himself. He descended to Earth with his elite guard, 20 of the finest warriors the Vexery Empire had ever produced. Each one had participated in hundreds of hunts across dozens of worlds. Each one had killed more prey than they could remember. They were the best of the best, and Xylith wanted them to study these strange creatures who dared to fight back. The hunt continued badly for the Vexery. Sergeant Cole had set traps throughout the mountain passes, simple pits covered with leaves, tripwires connected to explosive charges, and narrow paths that funneled the hunters into prepared kill zones. The Vexery adapted, but the humans adapted faster. Every time the aliens developed a countermeasure, Cole changed tactics. By the end of the second day, Xylith had lost 40 hunters. 40 of his warriors, creatures who had never known defeat, dead in the forests of this primitive world. The remaining hunters were afraid, though none of them would admit it. They had come expecting sport and found something else entirely. Xylith needed to understand why. He needed to know what made these humans different from every other species the Vexery had hunted. His opportunity came on the morning of the third day. A patrol captured a wounded human soldier who had been left behind during a retreat. Her name was Amy Torres, a private in a defense force who had taken a plasma burn to her leg during an engagement. She could not run, so she had hidden in a cave and waited for rescue that never came. The Vexery brought her before Xylith in chains. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, with dark hair and brown eyes that showed no fear. Xylith had seen captured prey before. They always trembled, always begged, always broke when faced with Vexery interrogation. This human did none of those things. You will tell me how your people hide from our sensors, Xylith said through his translator device. Amy looked up at the massive alien commander and said nothing. You will tell me where your warriors are positioned. Still nothing. Xylith leaned closer, letting his hot breath wash over her face. You will break eventually. All prey breaks. Amy finally spoke. Her voice was calm and steady. We are not prey. The statement confused Xylith. Of course they were prey. The Vexery were apex predators, and every other species was beneath them. That was the natural order of the galaxy. Explain, he demanded. Amy shifted her weight to ease the pain in her wounded leg. You think you are hunters because you are strong and fast and have sharp claws. But you do not understand what hunting really means. You have never had to work for a kill. Xylith's eyes narrowed, We have conquered 200 worlds. You conquered weak worlds. Worlds with species that gave up when they saw you coming. Humans are different. We evolved on a death world where everything tried to kill us. The weather tried to kill us. The animals tried to kill us. Even the plants tried to kill us. And we survived anyway. She paused to catch her breath. The pain was getting worse, but she refused to show it. We did not survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being the most persistent. We chased our prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to use tools because our bodies were weak. We learned to work together because alone we were vulnerable. And when something threatened us, we did not run. We killed it. Xylith listened with growing unease. The translator was converting her words accurately, but the meaning was difficult to accept. We hunted the giant animals of our world into extinction, Amy continued. We killed the great cats that stalked us in the night. We took wolves, the predators that hunted us, and turned them into our companions. We made them love us and obey us. We did the same to horses and elephants and every other creature we encountered. If we could not kill it, we tamed it. If we could not tame it, we killed it anyway. She met Xylith's 4 eyes without flinching. You came to Earth expecting to hunt prey. But you are not hunting prey. You are hunting the species that killed everything that ever threatened it. You are hunting the only creature on our planet that other creatures fear. You are hunting humans, and you have made a terrible mistake. Xylith stepped back from the small wounded creature in front of him. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he did not recognize. It was cold and uncomfortable, and it sat in his stomach like poison. Later, he would understand that the feeling was fear, while Amy endured her captivity. Kevin Marsh made a discovery that would change the course of the conflict. He had been analyzing combat footage from every engagement, studying how the Vexery moved and fought. He noticed something that the aliens themselves probably did not realize. Their armored scales were incredibly strong from the front, capable of stopping most human weapons. But the joints between the scales, particularly around the shoulders and underbelly, were vulnerable. More importantly, the Vexery hunting instincts were predictable. When they sensed wounded prey, they abandoned caution and charged forward. They could not help themselves. Millions of years of evolution had hardwired the response into their brains. Kevin presented his findings to Captain Palmer immediately. "We can use this," Lucy said. "If they cannot resist chasing wounded targets, then we give them wounded targets to chase. Right into prepared positions." She contacted Sergeant Cole with the new strategy. Cole listened carefully and began to smile. The Vexery were about to learn a painful lesson about the difference between hunting and warfare. The next engagement killed 15 hunters in a single hour. Cole's team staged a false retreat, leaving obvious blood trails and heat signatures for the Vexery to follow. The hunters charged forward exactly as Kevin had predicted, straight into crossfire from hidden positions. By the time Thrax managed to organize a withdrawal, half his remaining forces were dead. Commander Xylith received the casualty report in silence. 40 hunters dead now. More would die tomorrow. These humans were not just fighting back. They were winning. The Vexery had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were the apex predators of the known universe, and every species they encountered learned this truth quickly. Their bodies stood 8 feet tall, with 4 muscular arms ending in razor-sharp claws. Their scales could stop most projectile weapons, and their heat-sensing organs could detect prey from miles away. They had conquered over 200 star systems, and not once had they found a species capable of standing against them. Commander Xylith stood on the bridge of his hunting vessel. The Crimson Fang, watching the blue planet rotate slowly on his display screen. His officers had detected this world 3 cycles ago during a routine expansion sweep. Initial scans showed a single intelligent species, relatively young in their development, with primitive technology compared to Vexery standards. They called themselves humans, and they lived on a world they named Earth. Xylith had reviewed all the data his scouts had gathered. The humans had nuclear weapons, basic space travel, and projectile-based military technology. Nothing impressive. Nothing that could threaten Vexery hunters. He had seen dozens of species with similar capabilities, and all of them now served the Vexery Empire as either slaves or food stock. Sub-Commander Thrax approached the command platform and bowed his head in respect. He was younger than Xylith, but equally hungry for glory. The Grand Hunt was the highest honor a Vexery warrior could participate in, and Thrax had waited his entire life for this moment. "The hunting parties are ready, Commander," Thrax reported. 50 of our finest warriors await your order." Xylith turned his 4 eyes toward his subordinate. "Have you studied the prey?" "I have. They are soft creatures with thin skin and no natural weapons. They cannot see in darkness, they cannot sense heat, and they tire quickly. Their only advantage is their numbers, but numbers mean nothing against Vexery hunters." Xylith nodded slowly. He had reached the same conclusion. These humans would provide sport for perhaps 2 or 3 days before the hunt concluded. Then Earth would join the Empire, and its people would learn their place in the natural order of things. "Send the declaration," Xylith commanded. "Let them know what is coming." On Earth, the message arrived at exactly 3 in the morning, Houston time. Captain Lucy Palmer was sleeping in her quarters at the United Nations Defense Force headquarters when her communication device began screaming with emergency alerts. She was on her feet and dressed within 2 minutes, running toward the command center with her heart pounding against her ribs. The room was already full of activity when she arrived. Dozens of officers sat at their stations, and the main display showed something that made Lucy stop in her tracks. A massive alien vessel hung in orbit above Earth, and the translation software was still working on the message. It had broadcast to every frequency on the planet. Kevin Marsh, her tactical officer, looked up from his console with fear written clearly on his face. "Captain, you need to see this." Lucy walked to his station and read the translated message on his screen. The words were simple and direct. The Vexery Empire had claimed Earth as a hunting ground. Humanity had been selected as quarry for something called the Grand Hunt. Resistance was expected and encouraged, as it made the sport more enjoyable. The hunt would begin at sunrise. Dana Scott, the communications specialist, approached Lucy with a tablet in her hands. "I have been analyzing their transmission patterns. This is not a first contact situation, Captain. They have done this before. Many times." Lucy took the tablet and scrolled through Dana's analysis. The Vexery had broadcast similar messages to dozens of worlds over the centuries. The pattern was always the same: declaration, hunt, conquest. No species had ever successfully resisted them. "How long do we have?" Lucy asked. Kevin checked his readings. "Their drop pods are already entering the atmosphere. First landing zone appears to be the Rocky Mountains, approximately 50 miles west of Denver." Lucy closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, the fear was still there, but something else had joined it: determination. She had spent 20 years in the military, and she had faced enemies before. These Vexery were bigger and stronger and more advanced, but they were still just hunters looking for prey. They had made a mistake coming to Earth. Humans were not prey. Humans had never been prey. "Get me Sergeant Eddie Cole," Lucy ordered. "Tell him I need his team ready for deployment within the hour. And contact the Pentagon. I want every military asset we have moving toward Colorado." Dana hesitated. "Captain, their technology is far beyond ours. Our weapons might not even hurt them. Then we will find weapons that do, Lucy replied. These creatures think they know what hunting means. They think they understand predators. But they have never hunted anything like us. The first Vishri drop pods landed in the mountain forests just as the sun began to rise over the peaks. Thrax led the hunting party personally, stepping out into the cold morning air with his plasma claws activated and his senses sharp. The forest was quiet, and the trees stretched tall around them like silent witnesses to what was about to happen. Thrax inhaled deeply, letting his heat sensors map the surrounding area. He detected small animals in the underbrush, birds in the branches above, but no humans within immediate range. That was unexpected. The declaration should have caused panic. Prey always panicked when the Vexri announced their presence. "Spread out," Thrax commanded his hunters. "Find their settlements. Drive them toward the valleys where we can run them down." The Vexri warriors moved through the forest with practiced efficiency, their forearms pushing aside branches and their clawed feet leaving deep tracks in the soft earth. They had done this countless times on countless worlds, and they expected this hunt to follow the same pattern as all the others. But as the hours passed, Thrax began to feel something strange. The forest was too quiet. The settlements his scouts had identified were empty. There were no fleeing refugees, no screaming prey, no chaos. Instead, there was only silence and the unsettling feeling that something was watching them from the shadows. On the Crimson Fang, Commander Xylith monitored the hunt with growing curiosity. He had expected the humans to scatter like frightened animals. Instead, they seemed to have vanished completely. It was almost as if they had known the hunt was coming and had prepared for it. Xylith dismissed the thought. No prey species had ever prepared for a Vexri hunt. They always relied on running, hiding, or begging for mercy. These humans were probably just slower to react than most. He would learn the truth soon enough. And when he did, everything he believed about the natural order of the galaxy would begin to crumble. Thrax moved through the empty human settlement with growing frustration. The buildings were intact, the vehicles abandoned in neat rows, and personal belongings still sat on tables and shelves. But there were no humans. Not a single one. It was as if an entire town had simply walked away in the middle of their daily lives. His hunters searched every structure, but found nothing useful. No terrified prey hiding in basements. No wounded stragglers left behind. The humans had executed a complete evacuation with military precision, and Thrax could not understand how they had done it so quickly. Perhaps they fled deeper into the mountains, one of his hunters suggested. Thrax activated his heat sensors and scanned the tree lines surrounding the town. Nothing. The humans should have left heat trails, footprints, some evidence of their passage. But the forest revealed nothing except the normal patterns of wildlife. Back at the Houston Command Center, Captain Lucy Palmer watched the Vexri search party through satellite imagery. Dana Scott had positioned surveillance drones throughout the region, and every movement the aliens made was being recorded and analyzed. Kevin Marsh stood beside Lucy with a tactical display showing the positions of their response teams. Sergeant Cole reports his unit is in position. The thermal masking suits are working perfectly. The Vexri cannot detect them. Lucy nodded slowly. The thermal suits had been developed years ago for Arctic operations, designed to mask body heat in extreme cold environments. When Dana had analyzed the Vexri sensor capabilities, Lucy had immediately ordered every available suit deployed to the Colorado region. If the aliens relied on heat sensing to find prey, then humanity would simply stop generating detectable heat. Eddie Cole crouched in a shallow trench covered with branches and snow, watching the Vexri hunting party through specialized binoculars. His team of 12 soldiers surrounded him, each one invisible to the alien sensors and waiting for the signal to attack. Cole had spent 15 years as an Army Ranger before transferring to the Defense Force. He had hunted humans in deserts, jungles, and mountains. He understood how predators thought, how they moved, and how they could be defeated. These Vexari were impressive creatures, but they made a critical mistake that Cole recognized immediately. They were overconfident. They moved through the forest without caution, without checking their flanks, without any expectation of danger. They believed they were the hunters, and that belief made them predictable. Cole raised his hand and made a series of silent gestures. His team acknowledged and began their approach. Thrax heard the first shot but did not understand what had happened. One of his hunters suddenly fell forward with a hole in the back of his skull, dead before he hit the ground. Thrax spun around, his heat sensors scanning desperately for the attacker, but there was nothing there. Just trees and snow and impossible silence. A second shot rang out from a different direction, and another hunter collapsed. Thrax roared a command for his warriors to take cover, but there was no cover. The attack came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Cole watched through his scope as the Vexari panicked. They fired their plasma weapons into the trees, but they had no targets. They could not see his team, could not sense them, could not understand how they were dying. Within 30 seconds, 3 more hunters fell to precisely aimed rifle fire. Thrax made the only decision he could. He ordered a retreat. His surviving hunters ran through the forest toward the extraction point, abandoning their dead without ceremony. Cole let them go. The first engagement was over, and humanity had won. On the Crimson Fang, Commander Xylith received the report with complete disbelief. 5 hunters dead. No enemy casualties. No visual confirmation of the attackers. It was impossible. The Vexari had never lost hunters on the first day of any hunt in recorded history. How did they hide from our sensors? Xylith demanded. Thrax stood before him, his scales still dusty from the retreat. I do not know, Commander. They appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Our weapons hit nothing but trees. Xylith turned to his science officer. Analyze the combat footage. Find out what these humans are using. The science officer worked for several minutes before looking up with confusion on his face. They appeared to be using some form of thermal insulation. Our sensors cannot detect them because they generate no external heat signature. And their weapons are simple projectile launchers, nothing advanced, but they use them with remarkable precision. Xylith processed this information slowly. The humans had studied the Vexari and found their weakness within hours of first contact. They had developed countermeasures and deployed them effectively. This was not the behavior of prey. This was the behavior of rival predators. Double the hunting parties, Xylith ordered, and tell them to use visual tracking. These humans are clever, but they are still soft creatures in a forest full of Vexari warriors. Dana Scott intercepted the new orders within minutes. She translated the Vexari communications and sent them directly to Captain Palmer. Lucy read the message and smiled grimly. The aliens were adapting, which meant humanity needed to adapt faster. Contact Sergeant Cole, Lucy said. Tell him the Vexari are sending reinforcements. 100 hunters this time. And they know about the thermal suits. Kevin Marsh looked worried. Our teams cannot fight those numbers in direct combat. The Vexari are too strong. Lucy shook her head. We are not going to fight them directly. We are going to do what humans have always done. We are going to outlast them, outthink them, and make them regret ever coming to our planet. She pulled up a map of the Rocky Mountain region and began marking positions. The terrain was rough, full of narrow valleys, steep cliffs, and hidden caves. It was perfect for the kind of warfare humans had practiced for thousands of years. Guerrilla tactics, ambush points, supply line disruption. The Vexari thought they were hunting prey, but they had stumbled into a war they did not understand. Cole received his new orders and began repositioning his teams. The next engagement would be different. The Vexery would come expecting invisible attackers, so Cole would give them something visible to chase, something that would lead them exactly where he wanted them to go. The second day of the hunt was about to begin, and humanity was ready.